and today is a speaker meeting. And we have Nancy P speaking. I have been making personal outreach calls to Nancy P for several months now. She's awesome. She always answers the phone, and she is always more than eager to be of service to a newcomer or a fellow who is also working to recover from compulsive eating. I find her, availability and interest in service to be truly inspiring, and it's really helped me personally to recover from compulsive eating. And that is why I was so honored when she agreed to come and speak to my fellows here today in our humble little Nine Tools meeting. So, Nancy, I'm going to turn it over to you and start the timer. And thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Carol. Thanks for everybody for being here, and I'm really glad. You weren't kidding. That was really glowing. I feel like now I need to really step up. So my name is Nancy P. I'm a compulsive overeater, and I'm recovered. And I never, ever would have thought that. I'm not only am I recovered, but I'm serene. And the reason I say that is because for me, abstinence is not the goal. It's, yeah, I don't hurt myself with food anymore, but that is the least of the gifts that I've been given in my recovery. And today, anything that causes my mind, I like to call it disquiet, anything that sort of disturbs my serenity, I got to get rid of it. And, this, I don't want to go too much into my history. I can, but, I've been in Overeaters Anonymous since 1971. So from 1971 to 2017, that's 47 years, I got zip. I got not only no recovery, but no relief from the obsession of the mind. So, if I wasn't eating compulsively, if my body was the right size, or even if I wasn't, but I wasn't eating compulsively, I was obsessed with not eating. The little voice in my head would say, it's so awesome to be abstinent because abstinence is fantastic and I love it. And it's so great. I love to weigh and measure my food, and my food is so great because I'm abstinent, and abstinence is fantastic. And being abstinent is great, and I love it. And I'm so abstinent. Like, I'm just as tethered to the food when my mind is saying that as I am when I say I'm at a party and there's cookies over there. And if I go and steal one, no one will know, and my husband won't know, and I can put it in my pocket and hide and go in the ladies' room and eat it fast and then flush the toilet and then come out. No one will know. Maybe I can walk over by there, but again, no one will see me and they won't notice. And I'm just as tied to the food from both ends. So the solution that Overeaters Anonymous gives me is relief from both of those. If means promise, consequence, or threat. When it's written in the book, when you see the word if, promise, consequence, or threat, if I do what it says in the book, exactly as it says in the order that it says. And on the first page of the doctor's opinion, it says, in the course of his third treatment, and he's talking about Bill, this guy, he acquired certain ideas concerning a possible means of recovery. As part of his rehabilitation, he commenced to present his conceptions to other alcoholics, impressing upon them that they must do likewise with still others. And it goes on. But that sentence, those few sentences talks essentially to me about fellowship with other people, alcoholics or compulsive overeaters, like people of like mind. And that's the first page of the doctor's opinion. And guess what that actually is? That's actually step 12, right? Step 12 says we have to do three things. We have spiritual awakening, we practice these principles, and we carry the message. That's what we have to do. And it talks about step 12 on the first page of the doctor's opinion. The guy hasn't even done anything except that. He's basically written that. So it's super, super duper important, this idea of fellowship with others. So, okay, so you can get fellowship with others with meetings, but how many meetings a week can you go to? Like, people have jobs, they have families, they have, other commitments. They just can't be spending all day at a meeting. But telephone for me has been the way that I have the most effective way for me to reach that place where I've relieved from the allergy of the body and the obsession of the mind. And I do that. I arrived there through bitter experience. I will just say that. I came into Overeaters Anonymous, completely agnostic, completely full of myself, completely arrogant. And the only thing, well, I guess I'm still all of those things, but the only thing that I'm totally that way in spades is I'm very agnostic. So I'm not big on praying. I'm not big, like I get a lot of calls because I make a lot of calls. And I've had people say to me, okay, I want to do 10th step and I'm upset about something or whatever it is. It never matters to me because I never care about what the details are. But I'm upset about this and I don't, this is what I think. And I'll say, okay, well, what are you going to do about it? Well, I'm going to pray. And my response to that is, yeah, that's probably not going to work too well. Because how often did we pray, please, just please let me, be thin. Please let me get through this party. Please let me, whatever it is, please, please, please. And then we just sort of, cross our fingers and hope for the best. And that doesn't work. So you need to take action. And for me, I do a lot of action. I sponsor people. I speak at meetings such as this. I make myself available to take 10th step calls. I make a lot of phone calls, support, outreach calls. I do all that. But the thing that, that really helped me to turn the corner was the phone calls. And I came into, in 2017, we had a family catastrophe that one of my children was engaging in self-harm pretty drastically. And, basically hacking herself up with a razor blade and burning herself. And, I couldn't eat fast enough to get ahead of that. I couldn't. And trust me, I tried hard. And, I got into this new way to practice my program through A Vision for You. And, I felt great. And who wouldn't, if any of you are familiar with it, who wouldn't feel great? Because they talk about the solution, they don't talk about the problem. I mean, I've been to enough meetings where they all get up and they talk about how abstinent they are and how grateful they are to be abstinent. And, that to me is a mile wide and an inch deep. I'm not interested in that. That's not going to get me anywhere. And my sponsor said, I put the food down, I put the food down. I was able to put the food down to listen, but I knew this new thing wasn't going to work continuously unless I did more. So I got a sponsor, and she was a perfect sponsor for me. She's not my friend, but I love her. We have more like a professional relationship. I love my hairdresser too, and I pay him, and I love my dry cleaner and I pay them, and I love my sponsor, even though we're not buddies. I wouldn't choose her for a friend, but she is super effective. And one of the things that she told me to do was make at least 2 phone calls a day. And I was in such pain because of our family situation that if I was awake, basically, if I wasn't sleeping, working, or taking care of my family, I was on the phone. And I did not eat so much as an extra grain of rice. And I cried buckets and gallons and rivers and buckets and gallons of oceans of tears. I could not, if I was awake, I was always also crying. So it can be done, is my point. And the doctor's opinion starts with that. And then we move to, the 10th step, which the paragraph before what Carol read is super, super duper important. If you want to get better, I would suggest doing this. This thought, which is, they talk about the 9th step promises, brings us to step 10, which suggests that we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any mistakes as we go along. Blah, 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 blah. All that is very good, very important. We vigorously commence this way of living as we cleaned up the past. Also very important. We have entered the world of the spirit. Excellent reward, right? Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. Also very important. But here's where the kernel is. This is not an overnight matter. That's lucky, because I always wanted to start at the end and backfill all the details, like whatever was convenient for me. I never wanted to go through the process exactly as it was written. It should continue for a lifetime. Continue to watch for self-interest, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, which they do, I mean, my life, trust me, the glowing reference from Carol notwithstanding, my life is like a popular nightclub. one problem will get solved, and then the bouncer at the door says, okay, you next 5, you can go in. That's exactly what it's like. So when these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. Now, I'm very agnostic, so I'm not really into God, but whatever whatever floats your boat, you can use. We discuss them with someone immediately. That's step 5. And we make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. Steps 8 and 9. Then, and this is where, then we resolutely turn our attention, turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Resolutely meaning with focus and determination. And so I get a lot of 10th step calls. In fact, I got one this morning that was, all like a lot of detail. Of course, I'm never interested in the details. And to me, if you have to make restitution, you make restitution, and then you're done. And then I always say to people, I'm a knitter, and I always say, well, what about making a phone call? Like if do you have any suggestions? And I always say, yes, I do. If it were me, I would spend the next 45 minutes on the phone and make 3 or 4 or 5 or however many phone calls to put the final, finish the row. Like you're forgetting the last 5 stitches on the row if you don't make phone calls. That people sort of fall off. They're like, well, I'm having this thing, this 10th step, and I know that I need to talk about it, and I know that I need to make an amend, and then I'm praying and I still feel terrible. And I'm like, well, I can feel myself when I feel that way. When I pick up the phone and I say to somebody else, hi, it's Nancy P. You get one phone call to complain when you make your 10th step. At least that's what I tell people. I say, okay, this is your complaining phone call. After this, you make a half a dozen phone calls and you don't get to talk about it. You reach out to somebody else because whatever the problem is, whatever you're upset about, whatever I'm upset about is not the problem. I'm the problem. So what I need to do is get away from myself. I don't want to talk about my feelings. That's like sitting in a poopy diaper. Who wants to do that? Yuck. So, I need to get out of myself. And for me, the most efficient way to do that is through making phone calls. And the thing that keeps me in my right mind is making phone calls. And I do all the other stuff that it says. I do an 11th step inventory in writing every single night. I listen to meetings most days, unless I have a good excuse not to. I sponsor. I make phone calls. I read the literature. I do everything that it says. But the one thing that is consistent, it's portable, it's available almost 99.9% of the time for me is phone calls, because I have my phone at the ready, and I often have my headset with me, whether I'm walking or if I'm gardening or if I'm home or at work or whatever I'm doing. I can always make a phone call. I can always step out, make a quick phone call. I'm not really a step outer and maker of quick phone calls, really, not too often, but I prepare myself if I know that I'm going into a circumstance where life is going to be challenging, like if there's going to be food that I'm uncomfortable with, or a lot of food, if it's an eating event that I don't want to eat at. I mean, I've got I made a decision a long time ago. I joined Vision for You December 1, 2017, and I've not had to hurt myself with food since that day, but that was right. Our boring life does tick up a little bit in between Thanksgiving and New Year. So we have a few parties and open houses and that sort of thing to go to. And I said to myself, I got to be able to do this without eating. And I said, all right, the one thing that I'll do is no matter what time of day the event is, I'm going to eat my dinner and brush and floss my teeth before I go out. And then I make a bunch of phone calls before I leave without talking about, I'm just prepping myself for this party. I just make phone calls and get in touch with other compulsive overeaters, just like what it says on the first page of the doctor's opinion, impressing upon them that they must do likewise with still others. And then we move to the 10th step, and there's no problem that's too big or too small that I have not felt relief from getting in touch with, with my I call them my homies, with my gang. And big ones like my family catastrophe, when all I did was cry. And I've been, if I ding my manicure, which is a frequent thing because I garden and I cook, I'll call somebody up, not talk about the problem, but if all things lead to the refrigerator, whether you ding your manicure or God forbid you lose a child, then all pain is equal. So I keep up with that. That's like, light weights, high reps. I do that sort of over and over and over again because it works. And it's become a working part of my mind. When I stopped eating compulsively, I had a lot of time to do all the stuff that I do. When I was eating compulsively and people would say sponsor, meetings, calls, literature, service, all that stuff, I think to myself, holy moly, there's no way I don't have any time to do that. Well, when you stop eating compulsively and you stop thinking about eating compulsively, it's like cleaning out your purse. All of a sudden, it's like this gigantic, vessel that holds a lot of stuff. And that was my life. My life turned into a huge empty cavern that I could fit all this other stuff in and have time to do the things that I love and have time to be available to my family and to be spend time with my friends and to garden and to do all that stuff. So to me the phone has been the best, especially with
15 minutes?
COVID. That's 5 minutes. Okay, that's excellent because I have one more thing to say. That's been the most efficient vehicle to do that. And the last thing that I'll talk about is one of my favorite lines in the book. I mean, every line is like my favorite line in the book. But if anybody calls me, especially with 10-step stuff, I always say, I always go to this spot where it's the first line, the first sentence of Working with Others says, practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. And the operative words there are nothing, ensure immunity, and intensive. And so nothing means nothing, right? Doesn't mean everything except that, or nothing, all of this and that too, or except for that, or anything like that. Nothing means nothing, zero. And ensure for me is a fantastic word because I love insurance. I have a lot of it. My home's insured, my cars are insured, my stuff in my house is insured. I even have long-term critical care insurance in case I have a stroke so the state doesn't take all my money. And immunity means that if you do something like a vaccine, you'll never get something again. So insure and immunity together, who wouldn't want that? And then intensive. That means this is not one and done. You cannot say, like, how it says in the 5th step, it says, a mumbled apology or whatever will not do. We have to go deeper. We have to do this right. One phone call here and there is not going to do it. And one phone call a day is not going to do it. When my sponsor told me to make 2 phone calls a day, I decided I was going to make 2 connections a day. And that was hard because people are at work or they can't, whatever. I get a lot of voicemails. And so I made between 2 and maybe 20 or 30 calls a day. And guess what happened? I didn't eat, mental obsession left, and I became serene. So today, that was good practice. And before I came into Vision and was forced to make phone calls, and I would go to a meeting here and there, and I'd hear some woman speak, and I'd say, she's pretty cool. Maybe I'll give her a call. And I'd say, hi, this is Nancy P. from, Sunday night or whatever the meeting was. And they'd be like, who are you? I don't know who you are. I'm just trying to, what do you look like? And it would be embarrassing. And so I'd say, well, blah, 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 blah. And then I'd get off the phone and it was just humiliating. I felt so unwelcome. And, when I call Vision people or anybody that I meet on these meetings, I get a lot of calls. I've seen dogs at dog parks that are less happy to be there than Vision people are to talk to me. And so I make it Carol is right. I will accept the glowing reference on me being available on the phone. I am always thrilled when people call me. And I try to make them feel welcome and feel like they're really important because they are. And if anybody is struggling with food and you want to get better, get yourself a sponsor, do exactly what she says immediately and as hard as you can, and get on the phone and don't get off. If you are awake, you should be on the phone. And I'm telling you, that's what I did. And I would say that, my way of practicing my program might not be like the best way, but the data show me that I haven't hurt myself with food in 3 years and I am serene. And I'll take that over any food plan or any whatever. I don't, I'm serene, and I'll pass with that. Thanks, Carol.